Rivalries bring an elevated level of excitement and drama, and today we're going to go back through the history books to find the most vicious and competitive rivalries the NBA has ever seen. The NBA began at the end of the 1940s, but the only teams that were in the league that still exist today were the Boston Celtics, the New York Knicks, and the Denver Nuggets. Minneapolis Lakers, led by all-time great big man George Mikan, proved themselves to be the first NBA dynasty, as they would bring home 3 championships in as many seasons. Meanwhile, in Boston, soon-to-be legendary general manager Red Auerbach would pull the trigger on one of the most impactful trades in NBA history. In the offseason of 1956, the St. Louis Hawks had the 2nd overall pick and were primed and ready to select big man Bill Russell. However, there was one problem, as at the time St. Louis was dealing with its own racial problems and did not want to draft an African-American player. So the Boston Celtics swept in at the final second and traded for the young Russell on draft night. Little did the Hawks know that Bill Russell was going to become the most winningest player in NBA history. The earliest and still to this day the most impactful rivalry the NBA has ever featured was the Boston Celtics and the Lakers, who had now relocated to Los Angeles. The rivalry was one-sided during the 1960s, but the Lakers would put up a consistent fight in the NBA Finals, as the pair would meet a total of 6 times, as the Celtics would hand the Lakers 6 losses. Jerry West and Elgin Baylor were the stars for LA, while Boston was loaded with talent, as alongside Bill Russell was Bill Sharman, Bob Cousy, and later John Havlicek. The Lakers and Celtics was always a hard-fought series, but every time Boston would just make the right plays down the stretches of games. The NBA in the 1970s was missing that rivalry that brought it so much hype in the 1960s. So by the time Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were drafted in 1979, the NBA was in financial trouble and nearly went bankrupt. Magic and Larry carried so much hype to the NBA as the media and fans could not get enough of the pair. They were practically mirror images of each other on the court, but off it they couldn't be any more different, as Larry Bird was white and very quiet around the media, while Magic Johnson was of African-American descent and was a life of the party. In the NCAA final, the Michigan State Spartans, led by Magic, would beat Larry Bird's Indiana State in the most televised college game ever at the time. Coming into the 1980s, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had recently joined the Lakers, so when Magic arrived, he was straight into a championship window. The Lakers would meet the 76ers in the 1980 NBA Finals in his rookie season. Kareem would have to miss out in the deciding Game 6 with an ankle injury he suffered the game prior, as Magic started at center and would win the series without Kareem, as Magic won the Finals MVP, scoring 45 points on the road in Philadelphia. Larry Bird and the Celtics would get their own title the year after, as they'd beat the Houston Rockets in the 1981 NBA Finals. Bird would lead Boston to beat the Lakers in the 1984 NBA Finals, as the media would turn on Magic, as after bad plays down the stretches of games, the media began to refer to him as Tragic Johnson. After the embarrassing showing of the season prior, Magic worked his tail off and would be right back into the NBA Finals with the Celtics the year after. Game 1 would go down in history as the Memorial Day Massacre, as the Boston Celtics beat the Lakers 148-114. The Lakers folded under the pressure, and it looked like a repeat of the 1984 series was coming. Just as you thought the Lakers were done, Kareem put his foot down, as he put up a monster stat line of 25.7 points, 9 rebounds, 5.2 assists, along with some Magic brilliance down the clutch, saw the Lakers beat the Celtics in 6 games. Kareem won the Finals MVP as he dominated Boston. Over the course of the decade, the Lakers won 5 championships to the Celtics 3, while Bird and Magic won 3 MVPs each. Michael Jordan was at the peak of his individual game in the late 1980s, as Jordan was putting up ridiculous stat lines every night, but he had limited pieces around him as the Bulls were not winning games. That would all change in 1989 as Jordan led Chicago to victory against the Cleveland Cavaliers, as Michael hit one of the most clutch shots in NBA history. After the heroic win, Chicago would face the Detroit Pistons, which would be the beginning of a 3-season-long rivalry. The Bulls versus Pistons rivalry was nothing like the NBA had seen before, as the Pistons took physical and elevated it to another level. The Bad Boy Pistons, as they were named by the media, played with a football-like physicality, as a flagrant foul was not yet implemented. Scottie Pippen had recently been drafted to Chicago, so some much-needed help was on the way. However, the Pistons were not concerned with Pippen, as they had their sights set on Michael Jordan. Point guard Isaiah Thomas was talented, while Joe Dumars, Rick Mahorn, Dennis Rodman, and Bill Laimbeer were bullies, as Coach Chuck Daly made a set of rules that the Pistons would follow to destroy the young Jordan, named the Jordan Rules. The only rule was when Jordan gets into the paint, knock him down. Detroit scraped by the Bulls in 1989, and after a Game 7 loss to the Pistons in 1990, Jordan spent the entire summer in the lab getting stronger. So by the time they met in the Eastern Conference Finals in 1991, the Bulls dismantled the Pistons in 4 straight games, ending the rivalry between them. To this day, Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas are still not on speaking terms, as the pair openly despise each other. Michael Jordan would also have his battles with the New York Knicks, who were a more talented team than Detroit, as all-time great center Patrick Ewing led the charge for the Knicks, as he possessed a go-to mid-range and post-up game. The Knicks saw how Detroit dealt with Jordan and more or less played exactly the same way on the defensive side of the ball. Just as MJ thought the Pistons were in the real vision mirror, a mirror image of the same team but more skilled came to challenge him. The Knicks had the Bulls on the ropes in the 1993 playoffs, as they took games 1 and 2 in New York, but then squandered the lead to lose in 6 games. When Jordan retired in the 1993 offseason, the Knicks would beat the Scottie Pippen-led Chicago Bulls in the 1994 playoffs, but Jordan was at the peak of his powers. By the time he returned, there was no stopping Jordan at this this period of NBA history. After the 80s, the Lakers spent the 90s rebuilding as they drafted Kobe Bryant and traded for Shaquille O'Neal in 1996. Meanwhile, the San Antonio Spurs were good during the 1990s as they had center and MVP winner David Robertson, who was forced to sit out the 1996 season with a broken foot. The 1997 draft came, and because of a 20-62 record, the Spurs had the first overall pick and drafted the greatest power forward in the history of the NBA, Tim Duncan. The Twin Towers of San Antonio reached their peak in the 1999 season as they swept the Lakers in the second round of the playoffs and won the NBA Finals in 5 games versus the 8-seeded New York Knicks, who had made a miraculous playoff run. During this time, Shaq and Kobe had their all-time great run, as together they would win 3 straight NBA titles from 2000 to 2002. By the final title, though, Shaq and Kobe weren't seeing eye to eye, as off-court beef led their team chemistry to suffer. In 2003, the San Antonio Spurs and the Los Angeles Lakers would meet in the second round of the postseason, where after 3 long years of losing to the Lakers, the Spurs would win the series in 6 games, and go on to win the title against the New Jersey Nets behind a monster performance from Tim Duncan as he had 21 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists, and a ridiculous 8 blocks on 47.4% shooting in the closeout Game 6. After Robertson retired, San Antonio had to fill the pieces as they drafted Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili to provide some offense at the guard spots. In 2004, the Lakers and the Spurs would meet yet again in the second round, but this time it was the Lakers who would vanquish the Spurs in 6 games. The Lakers were back in the NBA Finals and would play the defensive-heavy Detroit Pistons with no real star. Detroit were never expected to beat the Lakers, however, the Pistons miraculously beat the Lakers in 5 games as Shaq and Kobe's chemistry disintegrated in front of millions of spectators worldwide. This collapse in the postseason led the Lakers to trade Shaquille O'Neal to the Miami Heat as a new era of the Spurs-Lakers rivalry was about to commence. In 2005, without Shaq, the Lakers missed the playoffs entirely, while the Spurs managed to beat the Detroit Pistons in a 7-game series and win their 3rd title. In 2007, San Antonio would sweep the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals behind Tim Duncan's 18.3 points, 11.5 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 2.3 blocks on 44.6% shooting from the field, winning the Finals MVP. The next time the pair would meet, it was in the 2008 Western Conference Finals, where the Lakers, now led by Kobe Bryant, would take down the Spurs in 5 games. However, the Boston Celtics was just too good as KG, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen won the championship, as the Lakers-Celtics rivalry was back too. In the 2 seasons to come, Kobe Bryant was at the peak of his powers. Kobe would win back-to-back championships, beating the Orlando Magic in the 2009 season, and then the rematch of the Boston Celtics in 2010, where he would extract his revenge. The modern era brought some of the most iconic moments in NBA history from some of the most memorable rivalries. The era began with the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics. Celtics star Paul Pierce was the adversary that LeBron James had to get by. In Cleveland, LeBron struggled to get by, but as soon as he joined the Miami Heat in 2011 and teamed up with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, he finally could get by the Boston Celtics, but not without a fight. In the 2012 playoffs, the Boston Celtics had the Miami Heat in a 3-2 hole, as Game 6 tipped off in Boston. Many expected the Miami Heat to be sent home that night, however, what unfolded was legendary, as LeBron had 45 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 assists on 73.1% shooting. The dominant display turned the tide of the series, as Miami would close it out in 7 games. During that time period, the Miami Heat and the San Antonio Spurs had 2 matchups in the NBA Finals. In the first matchup in 2013, it was the Miami Heat who were victorious, as the Heat would win their 2nd title after beating OKC the season prior. In 2014, the Spurs would get their revenge on the Miami Heat as young star Kawhi Leonard led the Spurs to win their 5th title among their dynasty. After the disappointing loss to the Spurs, LeBron James saw the writing on the wall as he moved back to Cleveland and vowed to bring the city a championship. This marked the beginning of another rivalry as the Cavs would battle all the way to the 2015 NBA Finals in the first season of LeBron's return, and it looked like he may just deliver on his promise. His new supporting cast featured young guard Kyrie Irving and rebound specialist Kevin Love. However, out west, a new brand of basketball was born as Stephen Curry and his Golden State Warriors were shooting the lights out from the 3-point line, while being elite on the defensive side of the ball too. Golden State made their first NBA Finals as the series kicked off with a bang, but heading into Game 4, Cleveland had a 2-1 lead over Golden State. LeBron was absolutely dominating the Warriors and an adjustment needed to be made. Coach Steve Kerr would switch Andre Iguodala onto LeBron James, and it proved to be the final straw as Golden State would win the next 3 games on their way to their first NBA championship. The following year saw the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors back in the NBA Finals for a rematch. Golden State had built upon their legacy as they won 73 games in the regular season, which is the most in NBA history. However, even after a 3-1 lead, Cleveland was not phased. Kyrie Irving and LeBron James in the last 3 games of the series played some of the best basketball the NBA has ever seen as they managed to come back from being down 3-1 and win a 7-game series in spectacular fashion. In the offseason, Kevin Durant decided that he needed to get a title as he joined the Golden State Warriors. Even though the Warriors and the Cavaliers would meet up in the next 2 NBA Finals, the rivalry was diminished as the Warriors were clearly a better team in 2017 and 18, as across the 2 final series, the Warriors only lost 1 game, winning back-to-back titles. In the current day of the NBA, the ongoing rivalries are the Golden State Warriors and the Memphis Grizzlies, the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics, and a rivalry that I could see happening in 2024 would be the Los Angeles Lakers and the Phoenix Suns. Make sure to let us know what you think the best rivalry in NBA history is using the comments section below.